To 21 years of marriage, and to the man who kept my wife company every Thursday. Now we're finally honest.
I was convinced I knew exactly who my wife was. I was wrong about everything. The woman I shared a bed with, raised a family with, built a life with for over 2 decades, was a complete stranger. And it all came crashing down in the bathroom of an upscale steakhouse during what was supposed to be our anniversary celebration. The restaurant was called Meridian, one of those dimly lit places with cloth napkins and $40 steaks where you go for special occasions. We'd reserved a private section for the whole crew. My wife Amanda, her sister Rachel, and Rachel's husband Ben, our daughter Sophie, who was 16, our son Jake, who was 13, plus a handful of close friends. 21 years of marriage felt like something worth celebrating, even though things had been tense lately. Amanda looked stunning that night in this deep burgundy dress that probably cost more than my weekly paycheck. Her blonde hair was styled perfectly, makeup flawless, wearing that practiced smile she used when she wanted to impress people or get something expensive. I stood up halfway through dinner to make a toast. My hand trembled slightly as I lifted the champagne glass. Everything looked perfect from the outside. The golden lights reflecting off wine glasses, laughter bouncing off the polished walls, the band playing what used to be our song. Too perfect looking back now. I gave some generic speech about love and commitment and building a life together. Everyone clapped and raised their glasses. Amanda smiled at me with that rehearsed expression and clinked her glass against mine. I felt nothing but obligation in that moment, which should have told me everything I needed to know. Around 8:30, I excused myself to use the restroom. I needed to splash cold water on my face, take a breath away from the performance we were both putting on. Marriage is hard work, and I'd been convincing myself that rough patches were normal after 21 years. I was washing my hands, staring at myself in the mirror, when the bathroom door opened. A woman I'd never seen before walked in. She was maybe 30, wearing a dark blue dress, and she looked absolutely terrified. She glanced around nervously to make sure we were alone, then leaned close and whispered something that made time stop. "Your wife put something in your drink. I saw her do it." She took out a small packet from her purse and stirred something into your champagne while everyone was distracted. She laughed about it afterward with that guy she was sitting close to. It didn't feel like a joke. I just stared at this stranger, my brain trying to process what she'd just said. She looked at me with genuine concern in her eyes, then quickly left before I could ask any questions. I stood there alone in that bathroom, heart pounding, hands shaking, trying to convince myself I'd misheard her. I walked back to the table in a complete daze. The hallway seemed impossibly long, my footsteps echoing too loudly, breath coming shallow and fast. When I got back to our private section, Amanda was laughing with Ben, Rachel's husband. She was leaning into him in this familiar way that suddenly seemed completely wrong. Her hand was on his arm. His hand was on the small of her back. They looked comfortable together in a way that made my stomach turn. My champagne glass was sitting exactly where I'd left it, the golden bubbles rising innocently to the surface. I didn't think about it. I just acted on pure survival instinct. When Amanda reached for her wine glass, I smoothly grabbed my champagne and set it directly in front of her while taking her wine for myself. It looked natural, like I was just being playful or romantic. She didn't even notice the switch. She picked up what was now her glass, the one with whatever she'd put in it, and clinked it against mine with that perfect smile. "To forever," she said. The irony of those words still makes me physically sick. About 12 to 15 minutes later, I started noticing changes. Amanda was blinking more frequently than normal. Her mascara began smudging at the corners. She laughed way too loudly at something Ben said, this high-pitched giggle that didn't sound like her natural laugh at all. Then she tried to stand up, probably to use the restroom, and her knees completely buckled. She grabbed the edge of the table for support, but missed. The entire restaurant seemed to go quiet. I jumped up and caught her, playing the concerned husband perfectly. "Babe, you okay? What's wrong?" She mumbled something completely incoherent, her mouth slack, eyes unfocused, pupils dilated. I helped her sit back down carefully, and people around us assumed she'd just had too much champagne on an empty stomach. Someone made an awkward joke about anniversary drinks hitting too fast. A few people chuckled nervously, but I knew exactly what was happening. I knew she'd sedated that drink specifically for me, and I'd just given her a dose of her own poison. The poetic justice of it was almost too perfect. What really struck me in that moment was watching her lean heavily on Ben. Not just lean, but practically melt into him. His arm went around her waist automatically, instinctively, like they'd done this exact thing dozens of times before. That's when everything clicked into place with sickening clarity. All the late nights at the gym that never seemed to result in any actual fitness. The expensive new underwear I never saw her wear around the house. The way she'd snap at me over the smallest things. Constant complaints about money despite me working 60-hour weeks. Her phone permanently glued to her hand, always positioned face down on the counter. Those Thursday evenings when she supposedly had book club but never seemed to actually discuss any books. I pulled out my phone under the table, hands shaking, and texted Marcus. He's an old college buddy who works as a private investigator, specializes in infidelity cases. I need everything on Amanda. Phone records, GPS tracking, surveillance, whatever you can get. I want it all. He responded within seconds. On it. Consider it done. I looked at Amanda slumped in her chair, eyelids flickering, murmuring something that sounded suspiciously like Ben's name, and I smiled warmly at our guests. Just a little too much celebration, I announced to the table. Let's get the check and get her home. Getting Amanda to the car was a complete performance. I played the dutiful, concerned husband perfectly in front of Sophie and Jake. Buckled her seatbelt carefully, told the kids that Mom probably accidentally mixed her anxiety medication with wine again, which wasn't entirely a lie this time. In the rearview mirror during the drive home, I watched Ben texting frantically, his thumbs flying across the screen like the night couldn't end fast enough for him. I made careful mental notes of everything. At home, I helped Amanda stumble to our bedroom. She collapsed onto the mattress without any grace, her expensive dress wrinkled and twisted, her carefully applied makeup smeared, her designer perfume suddenly cloying and nauseating. I pulled the covers over her, and she looked so small and harmless lying there, but nothing about this woman was harmless anymore. The moment I closed the bedroom door behind me, I went straight to the garage where I'd hidden surveillance equipment I'd purchased during a paranoid phase about 6 months earlier. At the time, I'd thought I was being dramatic and overprotective. Now I realized I hadn't been paranoid enough, hadn't trusted my instincts when they were screaming that something was wrong. I started with her car, that white BMW I'd bought her for Christmas 2 years ago. Got under the dashboard and carefully installed a GPS tracker that would send location data directly to my phone. Then I moved to her gym bag, which was sitting by the garage door. I opened it expecting yoga pants, a water bottle, maybe some protein bars. What I actually found made my blood run cold. A prepaid phone wrapped carefully inside her workout leggings. A burner phone. The kind people use when they're hiding something serious. I didn't touch it, didn't turn it on, didn't do anything that might alert her. I just took detailed photographs from every angle, making sure the serial number was visible. Evidence. I went back upstairs around 1 a.m. Amanda was asleep, snoring lightly, completely oblivious to the fact that her entire world was about to collapse. I stood in the doorway staring at her for a long minute. 21 years of marriage, and this was her anniversary gift to me. Attempted sedating and an affair with her brother-in-law. The next morning, Amanda was bright and cheerful like absolutely nothing had happened. She came downstairs in her robe, poured coffee, acted completely normal. "What happened to me last night?" she asked between sips, her tone casual and unconcerned. "I feel like I got hit by a truck." "You probably drank too fast on an empty stomach," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. She laughed it off, shrugged like it was no big deal, and leaned in to kiss my cheek. I let her do it. I had to play this smart and keep my cards close until I had everything I needed. Marcus delivered his initial findings within 3 days, and they were absolutely devastating. Phone logs showing hundreds of text messages to a number registered to Ben Patterson. Hotel receipts from the Grandview Suites downtown, room checked in every single Thursday afternoon for the past 5 months straight. They always used fake names to register, but Amanda used one of her old college student IDs with her maiden name. Credit card charges for room service showed champagne, chocolate-covered strawberries, massage oil, scented candles. They were having romantic getaways on my dime while I worked late believing she was at book club. But the security footage was what really destroyed me. Marcus had obtained recordings from the hotel's hallway cameras. There was Amanda in the corridor outside their regular room, head thrown back laughing, pressing her entire body against Ben in a way she hadn't touched me in at least 5 years. Them arriving separately, always within 10 minutes of each other. Leaving separately. Checking around corners first to make sure nobody saw them together. Her constantly checking her phone, probably making sure I wasn't calling or asking questions. The casual closeness between them, the comfortable way they moved around each other made me physically ill. I watched every single second of that footage, not because I needed it all for evidence, though I was documenting everything carefully. I watched it because I wanted to feel the full weight of the betrayal. I didn't want to numb it, or rationalize it away, or convince myself it wasn't as bad as it seemed. I wanted it burned into my memory so I would never be weak enough, desperate enough, or stupid enough to take her back when she inevitably tried to manipulate me. There were dozens of videos spanning months. Them kissing against the wall, Ben carrying her into the room, her leaving hours later, hair messed up, lipstick smudged, looking satisfied in ways I hadn't seen in years. I didn't confront them immediately because I knew I needed to be strategic. I spent the next 2 weeks playing the perfect husband while quietly gathering more evidence and protecting myself. I went to the county recorder's office and transferred the house deed entirely into my name, citing a refinancing technicality that Amanda never bothered to read, despite me leaving the paperwork on the kitchen counter for 3 days. I opened a separate bank account at a different institution and carefully moved exactly half of our savings, not a penny more. I documented every single dollar Amanda spent, every lie she told about her whereabouts, every Thursday evening she claimed to be at book club. I consulted with 3 different divorce attorneys, interviewing each one carefully. I chose Patricia Chen, who had a reputation as the most aggressive family law attorney in the county. She was expensive, but she was mean, and I needed someone who wouldn't hesitate to go for the throat. Patricia looked over everything I'd gathered and smiled. "This is airtight," she said. "She doesn't have a leg to stand on." We started preparing paperwork immediately, but I told her I wanted to wait for the right moment. I wanted Amanda to feel safe and comfortable before I pulled the rug out completely. The confrontation happened 2 Sundays later. I'd invited everyone for brunch at our house, made it seem like just a casual family gathering. Rachel came with their 2 kids. Amanda's parents drove up from their retirement community. Sophie and Jake were there, obviously. Ben showed up looking smug and comfortable, laughing easily, helping himself to mimosas like he owned the place. I waited patiently until everyone had food on their plates, until Amanda was mid-laugh about some trivial story she was telling. Then I stood up slowly, lifted my glass of orange juice, and announced I wanted to make another toast. "To 21 years of marriage," I said, looking directly at Amanda. Everyone raised their glasses automatically and smiled. "And to the man who's been keeping my wife company every Thursday afternoon for the past 5 months at the Grandview Suites downtown. Ben, I'm curious, how is that room service treating you?" The question hung in the air like poison gas. Time seemed to stop completely. Forks froze in midair. Someone's glass hit the table with a thud. Rachel's face drained of all color. Sophie looked at me with wide, horrified eyes. Amanda just blinked slowly, like she couldn't quite process what I'd said. "I've got receipts, Ben," I continued calmly, pulling printed documents from my jacket pocket. Video footage from the hotel security cameras. "You even signed for the champagne and strawberries using Amanda's fake name, which was sloppy." I slid a printed photo across the table directly in front of Amanda. It showed her in a hotel bathrobe, hair wet from the shower, laughing at something off camera with Ben's hand visible at the edge of the frame. "That's a really nice look on you," I said to her. "Shame you never wore it for me. Shame you saved all that happiness for someone else." I'd expected Amanda to cry or apologize or show some shred of human decency or remorse. Instead, she rolled her eyes dramatically, actually rolled her eyes, and stood up from the table. "Oh, grow up, David," she said with pure contempt in her voice. "It's not like we've been in love for years anyway." The entire room stared at her in absolute shock. "Don't act so surprised, everyone," she continued, looking around the table. "You've been boring since 2018, David. I've been dying inside this marriage. And that gives you the right to sedate me?" I asked, my voice deadly calm. She had the audacity to laugh. "That was just supposed to help you relax and stop being so uptight about everything. God, you take everything so personally. It wasn't even a big deal." I could feel my controls slipping, but I held on. I pulled out the final envelope I'd prepared, the one Patricia had helped me assemble. Inside were divorce papers, complete asset division documents, copies of every single text message between Amanda and Ben that Marcus had recovered, bank statements showing the shell company payments, and affidavits from the hotel staff. I had absolutely everything documented. As the room dissolved into complete chaos around her, as Rachel started screaming at Ben demanding to know how long this had been going on, as Amanda's parents stared at their daughter with pure disgust and disappointment, I simply walked away. Not because I was defeated or running, but because I was completely done being her fool. I'd said everything that needed saying. The evidence spoke for itself. I walked out of that dining room, out the front door, and didn't look back. Amanda followed me outside barefoot, her voice sharp and angry, cutting through the morning air. So now you're the sufferer? You pulled some dramatic gotcha moment in front of the entire family. Real mature, David. Real classy. I kept walking toward my car, my hands shaking with adrenaline. She grabbed my arm hard, her nails digging in. You think you're going to walk away from me after all these years? After everything I sacrificed for you? After everything I gave up? I turned slowly and looked directly at her. What exactly did you sacrifice, Amanda? What did you give up? Loyalty, respect, honesty. Your Thursday afternoon schedule with my brother-in-law? Her expression didn't soften or crack. No regret, no shame, no remorse. Just cold, calculated anger that she'd been caught. I should have left you years ago, she hissed. You were just a safe bet, a reliable provider. But you're boring and cold and rigid, and watching you sit at that stupid computer every night working made me feel like I was dying inside. You mean the computer that paid for that BMW you're so proud of? I said quietly. The vacations to Europe, this house, Sophie's private school tuition, Jake's sports equipment, your shopping addiction? She smirked at me, actually smirked. You don't get it, and you never did. You're the kind of man women settle for, not the kind they actually want. That hit deeper than I'd expected, maybe because I'd thought similar things about myself late at night when I couldn't sleep. She kept talking, her voice rising with each word. I stayed because leaving was harder than staying. But don't you dare stand there and act like you were some kind of prize. You were a job I needed a break from. That's all you ever were. I stood there with my fists clenched tight at my sides. Not because I wanted to punch her, I'd never punch anyone in my life, but because I wanted to scream and rage and make her hurt the way she'd hurt me. Instead, I walked to my car, popped the trunk, and pulled out a suitcase I'd packed that morning just in case. You're leaving? She asked, crossing her arms like she had the upper hand in this situation. No, I said calmly. You are. She actually laughed out loud. This is my house, she said triumphantly. I pulled out the property deed from my jacket, the one I'd had transferred weeks ago. Not anymore, I said. I transferred ownership months ago when I started noticing all the red flags I'd been ignoring. You were too busy with Ben to notice you were signing away your rights. Her laugh died instantly. You're going to pack a bag tonight and leave, I continued. You're going to sign the divorce papers my attorney serves you tomorrow. You're going to waive any claim to alimony. Because I have video footage, I have text messages, I have hotel receipts, and I have evidence that you sedated me, everything. If you fight me on any of this, if you make this difficult or public, I will systematically destroy your reputation completely. You'll lose your job at the marketing firm. You'll lose your friends. You'll lose your standing in this community. I'll make sure everyone knows exactly who you really are. I'll post everything online if I have to. Her face dropped for the first time, real fear showing through. You're not who I married, she whispered. No, I agreed. That man would have begged you to stay. That man would have believed your lies and excuses. He died the moment you chose Ben over our family. I turned my back on her and walked into the house. I didn't care where she went that night. Didn't care who she called. Didn't care if she had to sleep in her precious BMW. That part of me, the part that had clung to her and hoped she'd change and believed in the woman I'd married, that part was dead and buried. Upstairs, I found Sophie sitting on the edge of her bed, knees pulled to her chest, tears streaming down her face. You okay, Dad? She asked in a small voice. I nodded, swallowing the massive lump in my throat. I will be, I managed to say. She looked like she wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but I didn't have the emotional strength to explain that her mother had betrayed all of us, that the family she'd known her entire life was a lie. So I sat beside her on the bed, put my arm around her shoulders, and we just sat there together in silence, while the sound of arguing drifted up from downstairs. About 20 minutes later, the front door slammed hard enough to shake the windows. 21 years of lies and deception walked out of my life in a single moment. The morning after felt completely surreal, like I was living in someone else's life. I woke up to absolute silence. No Amanda brewing her fancy coffee downstairs. No expensive perfume lingering in the hallway. No sound of her high heels clicking across the hardwood floors. The house felt hollow at first, then clean, like her absence had somehow disinfected the entire place. Sophie came downstairs still in her pajamas around 9. She poured herself a bowl of cereal without saying anything and sat across from me at the kitchen table. Is Mom coming back? she asked quietly, not meeting my eyes. Not to this house, I said honestly. She nodded slowly, processing. I heard some of what she said last night, Sophie admitted. I didn't ask which part she'd overheard. I knew it didn't matter. Any part of that conversation was pure poison. She's been different for a long time, Sophie added, acting weird, always on her phone. I just didn't want to believe what I was seeing. Neither did I said. We sat in heavy silence for a few minutes. The doorbell rang before we could talk more. I opened it to find Ben standing on my front porch. No smile this time, no fake charm. He looked like he hadn't slept at all, and there was a faint bruise forming on his cheek, probably courtesy of Rachel. Can we talk now? He asked. You've got exactly 5 seconds, I said flatly. Man, it wasn't supposed to go down like this. 5. She told me you two were basically just roommates. Said you didn't even sleep in the same bed anymore. 4. Look, I was stupid, and I know that, but she came on to me first. I didn't force anything. 3. He raised his hands defensively. I'm sorry, okay? 2. I stared at him with absolutely zero sympathy. 1. He backed away from the door quickly. Okay, I'm leaving. Good, I said, because if you ever step anywhere near my daughter or my property again, you won't be walking away next time. That's not a threat. It's a promise. He didn't even try to argue, just turned and walked to his car like a beaten dog with his tail between his legs. I watched him drive away and realized I didn't feel rage anymore, just disgust. Deep, permanent, soul-level disgust. By that afternoon, I'd already spoken extensively with my lawyer, Patricia. Amanda had been officially served the divorce papers at the hotel, where she'd apparently checked in using her own credit card. She hadn't responded yet, but Patricia assured me she would. She can either sign quietly and walk away with something or be dragged through the courts and lose everything, Patricia explained. With the evidence you have, no judge in this county will show her any mercy. Make sure she knows that. Later that evening, I got an unexpected call from Rachel. Can I come over? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. She showed up an hour later, completely alone. No makeup covering her red, swollen eyes, no designer clothes, just jeans and a sweatshirt. She looked more genuinely human than I'd ever seen her. I didn't know, she said the absolute second I opened the door. I swear to God, David, I didn't know any of this was happening. I let her inside. She sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Amanda used to sit pretending to look at Pinterest while probably texting Ben. I kicked him out, Rachel said, her voice breaking. Told him to pack his crap and get out of our house. And I told our kids everything because they deserve to know what kind of man their father really is. What kind of man throws away his family for an affair with his wife's sister? I nodded, not knowing what else to say. I'm so sorry you had to find out this way, I said. No, she shook her head firmly. I'm sorry I never saw what you were going through. You deserve so much better than this. We all did. We sat together in comfortable silence for a while. Silence and clarity seemed to be the theme of my new life. That evening after Rachel left, I went through our old photo albums. Family trips to the beach, birthday parties, Christmases, anniversaries. In every single photograph, I saw the same pattern. Me smiling genuinely, looking at Amanda with love and devotion. Amanda with her perfect pose, her practiced smile, her eyes never quite looking at me the same way. The evidence had been there all along. I just refused to see it. I put all the albums in a cardboard box and taped it shut with packing tape. The past belonged in storage, locked away where it couldn't hurt anymore. The next weeks were filled with paperwork, legal meetings, and quiet evenings at home with Sophie. Rachel started stopping by a few times a week. We'd talk about safe things at first. Books we were reading, music we liked, stupid reality TV shows. Normal things that didn't hurt to discuss. She brought homemade soup when Sophie caught a bad cold. Stayed late one night after Sophie went to bed, and we just talked on the couch about our marriages, our regrets, our hopes for the future. Around midnight, we both fell asleep sitting up. I woke up at 3 a.m. with a blanket someone had thrown over us. It wasn't romantic or sexual. It was just real. A kind of peace and comfort I'd completely forgotten could exist between two people. Amanda tried one more time about 3 weeks later. She showed up uninvited on a Tuesday evening, all tears and shaking breath, mascara running down her face. Can we please just talk? She begged at the door. Maybe we can reset, start over fresh, work on things. I didn't yell or curse at her. I didn't slam the door in her face. I just looked her directly in the eye and said very calmly, You ended this marriage, Amanda. I'm just the one bearing the body. She stood there for a moment like she was going to argue, then turned and left without another word. I watched her car disappear down the street, taillights fading into the darkness, and I knew with absolute certainty that it was finally completely over. Weeks became months. The house began to feel fundamentally different, warmer, and calmer without Amanda's constant tension poisoning the air. Even the walls seemed to breathe easier. Sophie's laugh slowly returned, hesitant and quiet at first, but increasingly genuine as time passed. She started inviting friends over again for the first time in over a year. I redecorated the master bedroom completely, stripped away all of Amanda's decorative pillows that were for show, the scented candles she bought but never actually lit, the silk curtains she'd insisted we needed. I replaced everything with things Sophie and I chose together at Target on a random Saturday afternoon. Simple, comfortable, real. When we were done, Sophie stood in the doorway looking at the room and said, "It feels less fake now." I knew exactly what she meant. One clear night, I found myself sitting alone on the back porch with a glass of bourbon, just watching the stars and listening to silence. I hadn't done this in years, maybe a decade. Amanda had always needed something from me. Attention, validation, status, money, constant reassurance. Never peace. Peace and quiet had bored her. She'd always needed noise and drama and excitement. That's what I'd been missing without even realizing it. The ability to just exist without performing. That same night, Rachel texted me completely out of the blue. "You still up?" I replied, "Yeah, out on the porch." She showed up 10 minutes later wearing a hoodie and jeans with her hair pulled back. No makeup, no mask, no performance. We didn't talk much at first, just sat together in the comfortable darkness. The breeze was soft and cool, and the moon hung low in the sky. After maybe 20 minutes of companionable silence, she said quietly, "You know, I think Ben was always jealous of you." "Really?" I asked, genuinely surprised. "He wanted your life," she explained. "The respect people had for you, the stability, the consistency. He just didn't want to earn any of it himself. He wanted the results without the work. Are you okay?" I asked after a while. "I will be," she said softly. Then she added, "I hated how Amanda treated you, even before I knew about the affair. The way she'd dismiss you or roll her eyes when you talked. You just never seemed to see it. Or maybe you did see it and didn't want to believe it." "I wanted to believe in her more than she deserved," I admitted. "You loved her more than she was capable of loving anyone," Rachel said. "She didn't deserve half of what you gave her." I looked away, throat tight. "Well, she got all of me for 21 years. And now?" Rachel asked. "Now I rebuild," I said simply. The divorce was officially finalized about 4 months after that nightmare anniversary dinner. No dramatic courtroom confrontations, no drawn-out legal battle. Amanda signed everything her attorney put in front of her. She probably thought it made her look noble and reasonable. The truth was, she didn't want any of this becoming public record or courtroom testimony. Her reputation at work and in social circles mattered more to her than revenge or fighting for assets. I kept the house, full custody of Sophie since Jake had chosen to stay with me too, and most of our combined assets. Amanda kept her BMW, her lies, her affair partner, and a downtown condo I had absolutely zero interest in. She tried one last petty jab through her lawyer, a handwritten note that Patricia passed along with visible disgust on her face. It read, "Maybe one day you'll realize you weren't enough for me. Maybe that's okay. You can learn to live with being second best." I actually laughed out loud when I read it, not because it hurt, but because it meant absolutely nothing. That woman, whoever she really was behind the mask, was gone from my life completely. She could scream into her empty condo walls all she wanted. I wasn't listening anymore. I threw the note in the trash without a second thought. The day after the divorce was finalized, I did something spontaneous. I took Sophie out for dinner, just the two of us. We went to Meridian, the same steakhouse where this entire nightmare had started 8 months earlier. She was hesitant when I suggested it, uncomfortable with the memories. But I said, "Let's reclaim this place. Turn the bad memory into a good one." We sat at a completely different table in a different section. No extended family, no performative toasts, no poison in anyone's glass. Just a really good steak dinner, genuine laughter, and real conversation. Sophie asked me questions about my life before I got married, about college and my early career and dreams I used to have. I told her stories I'd never shared with anyone, things I'd buried under years of trying to be the perfect provider. We laughed until dessert arrived, and as we were leaving, the hostess stopped us. "You've got a wonderful daughter," she said warmly. I know, I replied, putting my arm around Sophie. She's literally the only reason I survived all this. We drove home that night singing badly to songs on the radio, and I felt lighter than I had in decades. A few months later, out of nowhere on a random Tuesday afternoon, a thick white envelope showed up in my mailbox. Fancy paper, embossed letters, gold wax seal, the whole deal. I opened it, puzzled, and just froze. It was a wedding invitation. Amanda and Ben were getting married. Somehow they gotten engaged and actually had the nerve to invite me and Sophie. Inside was even a handwritten note from Amanda. No hard feelings, right? Thought you might want closure. We'd love for you and Sophie to celebrate with us. I stood in the driveway staring at it, completely stunned by the level of delusion it took to send that. I didn't show it to Sophie. She'd carried enough of Amanda's damage already. I walked straight to the backyard, tossed the envelope in the fire pit, and watched it burn to ash. That night, over dinner on Rachel's patio, I told her about it. By then, Rachel and I had been spending time together often, quietly, comfortably. They sent you a wedding invite? Rachel asked, her jaw tightening. Yeah, I said. Guess I'm supposed to clap for their betrayal now. She shook her head, staring into her wine. She's not even embarrassed. That's the scariest part. She never was, I said. Not when I showed her proof. Not even when her parents looked at her like they didn't know her. She sold her conscience a long time ago. Rachel laughed, a sharp, sad sound. I used to envy her, she admitted. Her looks, her confidence. I thought you two were perfect. She did own every room, I said quietly. She just never wanted me in it. We finished dinner in easy silence. Later, out on the porch, Rachel looked at me longer than usual. You're not the same anymore, she said softly. That bad? I asked, smiling. She shook her head. No, that free. That night, lying awake at 2 a.m., I thought. Not about Amanda, but about how close I'd come to losing myself trying to save something that was already dead. I'd lived in darkness and convinced myself it was just poor lighting. So I opened my laptop and started writing, not a rant, but a reminder to myself. She didn't break you, she freed you. Don't forget that. I wrote down every red flag I'd ignored. The forced smiles, the excuses, the late nights, the emotional distance. How I'd traded self-worth for a fake sense of stability. How I'd mistaken endurance for love. How I'd let her coldness convince me I was being patient, not weak. I ended the letter with a truth I needed to remember. You are not her shame or her mistake. You are your own rebirth. I printed it, folded it, and put it in my wallet. Their wedding went on as planned. Some overpriced mountain resort, champagne towers, the whole fairy tale act. I didn't go, but I sent a gift. A framed photo from our own wedding day, the glass cracked straight down the middle. On the back, I wrote, Fairy tales end. This one just took longer. Enjoy your prize. I never heard back. Months passed. Rachel and I kept growing closer, slowly and naturally. No pressure, no rebound energy. Sophie adored her. Laughed more than I'd seen in years. We weren't trying to fix each other. We were just honest people finding peace. One night, watching Sophie paint for school, Rachel leaned in and whispered, You're really doing well, David. You should be proud. I looked around at my quiet, steady life and said, I finally believe that. And I meant it. The year ended without drama, just calm. Amanda vanished after her wedding. Word eventually came that she and Ben had moved to Florida. There were rumors, money issues, fights, even a restraining order from one of his exes. But I didn't care. For once, none of it mattered. Sometimes late at night, I'd think, not about her, but about me. About how I stayed so long believing that loyalty meant pain, that suffering proved love. It didn't. It was fear pretending to be devotion. One evening, Sophie and I watched an old cheesy comedy, the kind Amanda would have rolled her eyes at. Halfway through, Sophie laughed, leaned on my shoulder, and whispered, You're so much happier now, Dad. I kissed her head. So are you. She nodded. Mom doesn't really call much. She's not ready to be the mom you deserve, I said gently. Maybe she never will be. Sophie just nodded again. No anger, no sadness, just peace. That's real healing. Later, after she went to bed, I stood on the back porch under a sky full of stars. No more weight on my chest, no knot in my gut, just stillness. My phone buzzed, a text from Rachel, a photo of Sophie playing with her niece at the park. A small, perfect moment. And it hit me. I'd stopped waiting for life to go back to normal. I'd built something new, steady, real mine. No begging for love, no walking on glass, just solid ground. This story didn't end with revenge or begging or some dramatic reckoning. It ended better, with me, whole again. Not saved by someone else, but by remembering who I was before I forgot. So if you're reading this wondering if you're crazy for noticing the coldness, the lies, you're not. You're waking up. Don't waste another year trying to patch shattered trust. You don't need them to fall for you to rise. Let them drown in their own mess. You rebuild, stronger, wiser, and finally free.